welcome. We started our class.
Oh, we did?
Yes, it's 12 o'clock. Welcome everyone. We are recording and live the book of Joshua as usual, right? And let me share the screen with you. For both, oh wait, no, I'm sorry. I still have to open the other one, which is this one. Okay. Meanwhile, everyone could say hello to our new student, in Graetz. Here we are. I'm just gonna remind everyone that November November 12th is a lunch bunch with Graetz. I was going to talk about her new book that just came out about the sad phenomena of wife beating in Judaism and how Judaism confronts it. And also she's going to be teaching sisterhood, not this Sunday, next Sunday. And that will be about AI and the use of artificial intelligence, ChatGPT and all that within Jewish sources. So please register for those, and you want to come. Was there another announcement or something?
No, I'm just making sure everything's working okay.
Right, that's what I'm doing.
Holding up the wall.
Right.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Exactly, so that.
No, I think it is working.
It should be, so that's why I'm.
It should be. I did
I'm hovering,
everything.
lingering.
Yeah, I'm sorry for all these technical issues thing. We just want to make sure that it's working properly.
And math.
But yeah, we're good. Here, you see here, it says here, YouTube.
Mm-hmm, good.
Yeah. Okay, so today we are Joshua chapter 11.
Do you have the handouts, Rabbi? Want me to get them?
Well, they should be here.
I think they're behind you, maybe.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah, so we're chapter 11 here.
Thanks.
That will be on page page 13, chapter 11.
Did I
page
send
13.
enough over?
Okay.
Do we need?
And if you remember, last week we had all the southern kings gang up against Joshua and the Israelites in an attempt to defeat them, and the Israelites were the ones that won that war over all the different kings of the southern part of the central and southern parts of Israel. And also the Gibeonites, the ones that made peace with Israel, were protected by Joshua and the Israelites. They kind of like kept the covenant with them and did not kill them. And in Joshua 11 today we read, when the news reached King Yavin of Chatzor, he sent messages to King Yoav of Madon, to the king of Shimron, to the king of Achshaph, and to the other kings in the north, in the hill country, in the Arava south of Kinneret, in the lowlands, and the district of Dor on the west, to the Canaanites in the east and in the west, to the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, and Jebusites in the hill country, and to the Hivites at the foot of Hermon in the land of Mitzpah. Okay, so all these names here come to tell us, and where's my stick? Okay, let's have a nice long stick here where I can point out, right? Where did they? that?
I'm okay.
You don't want me hitting the students, I guess.
You can also highlight.
But I can highlight here, okay? So last week, these are the kings that were fighting the central and the southern. This week, this is the Sea of Galilee, the Kinneret. This is all these kings here that went to war. And the central city is Chatzor, okay? Which is here. And here it is Chatzor. It's like one of the central cities. We're a huge.
Where's Dora there? Is Dora up there?
Rabbi,
Dora.
someone's asking what Doris.
Yeah, Dor is there as well. Okay, by the Kinneret. Okay. Steve, I think, yeah, we have sources for you as well. All these kings, they took the field with all their armies, an enormous host, as numerous as the sands on the seashore, and a vast multitude of horses and chariots. They were also much richer. They had a lot more gold and silver, and they had many more chariots and horses to go against the Israelites. So this is really a bigger war than the one we saw last week. All these kings joined forces. We're now on chapter 11, verse 5. All these kings joined forces. They came and encamped together at the waters of Merom to give battle to Israel. But God said to Joshua, do not be afraid of them. Tomorrow, at this time, I will have them all lying slain before Israel. You shall hamstring their horses and burn their chariots. Okay, so we're seeing some, also very harsh tactics on behalf of the Israelites of also kind of like hamstringing the horses, cutting them at the hamstring, which is cruel. Okay, but these are the weapons of war. Okay, it's like today you would fire at a tank, so it can't. You'd fire at the wheels of a vehicle, so it can't move. This is how they disabled the horses. So Joshua, with all his combat troops, came upon them suddenly at the waters of Meron and pounced upon them. God delivered them into the hands of Israel, and they defeated them and pursued them all the way to the great Sidon and Mislefot Maim, and all the way to the valley of Mitzpeh on the east. They crushed them, letting none escape. And Joshua dealt with them as God had ordered him. He hamstrung their horses and burned their chariots, 4 horses. And we're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit more. Joshua then turned back and captured Chatzor and put its king to the sword. Chatzor was formerly the head of all those kingdoms. The capital of that area was Chatzor. They prescribed and put to the sword every person in it. Not a soul survived, and Hatzor itself was burnt down. Okay, now I want to go to the PowerPoint here, okay, and talk for a moment about Hatzor, okay. But in this chapter, the northern kings against Joshua, Joshua succeeds in defeating the northern Canaanite kings as well, despite their military power being far greater than that of the southern kings. And this victory was not achieved merely through clever battle tactics. The northern Canaanite kings gathered under the leadership of Yavin, king of Chatzor, to fight against Joshua and the people of Israel. This time, the military strength of Yavin and his allies was vastly superior to that of the coalitions assembled by the other kings in previous battles against Joshua and his warriors. Yet, once again, the Canaanites were completely defeated without any chance of recovery through battle strategies nearly identical to those Joshua had used before. Here, the wars of Joshua reached their conclusions. Okay? And in this chapter, we are shown one of the reasons why the Canaanite nation suffered such a crashing defeat. The Jerusalem Talmud tells us that Joshua sent letters of peace to the inhabitants of the land before waging war against them. The Rabbi Maimonides is a commentator from the 12th century, rules in Law of Kings following the Jerusalem Talmud. One may not wage war against anyone in the world until they have first offered peace, whether it is an optional war or an obligatory one. In light of this, we better understand the verse in our chapter. There was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel except the Hivites, the inhabitants of Gibeon. They took all in battle. The absolute refusal of the Canaanites nations to respond to Joshua's calls for peace and the hardening of their hearts stemmed from their own cultural and way of life. Okay, what was their cultural way of life? Okay, according to Joshua Klein, a Tanakh teacher in Israel. First, the deep divisions among them had accustomed them not to listen to one another and certainly not to the appeals of a foreign nation. This fragmentation led them to believe without rational thought that each could repel the invading force on their own. That's one reason. The second is the idolatrous lifestyle of the Canaanites people caused them to disregard the value of human life and to see war and killing as the ultimate expression of power. Those who sought peace appeared to them as weak, lacking character and strength, people afraid of war and lacking confidence in themselves. Therefore, the Canaanites assumed that the people of Israel and Joshua would never succeed in their mission. In truth, however, Joshua and Israel fulfilled the word of God entirely, first to offer peace, and only if rejected to wage war against the Canaanite nations until complete victory. And apparently, Yavin, king of Chatzor, partially understood this principle and attempted to unite all the northern forces, but by then it was already too late. Okay, so this is kind of like the reason that he says the northern kingdoms failed in their attempt against war against the Israelites.
There's only one problem. It doesn't seem to me that they offer peace. I don't see any place in the text where Joshua is offering peace.
Well, it's based on the verse that it says, was that, which chapter was that? Was it in,
Or much earlier.
Yeah.
that was in Joshua 11. No, I didn't get to that verse, I'm sorry. Joshua captured all those royal cities and their kings. He put them to the sword. He prescribed them in accordance with the charge of Moses, the servant of God. However, all those towns that are still standing on their mounds were not burned down by Israel. It was Chatzor alone that Joshua burned down. The Israelites kept all the spoil and cattle of the rest of those cities as booty, but they cut down their populations with the sword until they exterminated them. They did not spare a soul. Just as the Eternal had commanded God's servant Moses, so Moses has charged Joshua, and so Joshua did. He left nothing undone of all that God had commanded Moses. Joshua conquered the whole of this region, the hill country of Judah, the Negev, the whole land of Goshen, the Shelah, the Arabah, and the hill country and coastal plain of Israel, everything from Mount Halak, which ascends to Seir, all the way to Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon, at the foot of Mount Hermon, and he captured all the kings there and executed them. Joshua waged war with all those kings over a long period. Apart from the Hivites who dwelt in Gibeon, not a single city made terms with the Israelites. All were taken in battle. Okay, so this verse here, verse 19, okay, apart from the Hivites who dwelt in Gibeon, not a single city made terms with Israel. All were taken in battle. The Gibeonites are the exception. They are the ones that were made a pact with the Israelites. All the other ones, the verse assumes, were offered a peace treaty, okay, and had the ability to do peace with the Israelites. Because they weren't, and they waged war against the Israelites, that's why they exterminated. So this is kind of like how Maimonides and Jerusalem Talmud kind of like deduct. But you're right, it doesn't say so in a clear way, but they deduct from the fact that the others were saved that this could have been the fate of all the other nations. Okay, why did this happen? For it was God's doing to stiffen their hearts to give battle to Israel, in order that they might be prescribed without quartered and wiped out, as God has commanded Moses. So there was the ability, they could have acted differently, they could have been peace, but it was like in the best interest of God and the Israelites that they waged war, because this allows for them to kind of like clear the whole land. At that time, Joshua went and wiped out the Anak. Wait, I'll get back to that in a moment, okay? So, because I wanted to talk for a moment about Chatzor, okay? Tel Chatzor, covering 800 dunams, is the largest archaeological mound in Israel, okay? And again, Chatzor is here. This is Merom. The Battle of Merom was all here with all the Canaanites, a big battle next to Chatzor. Chatzor was a city that Joshua burnt down and proscribed completely, okay? And this city is 10 to 20 times bigger than any other Canaanite Amorite city. The king of Chatzor maintained correspondence, letter have been found with the kings of Babylon and Egypt, exactly as the verse says. For Chatzor before time was the head of all those kingdoms. So we have also archaeological evidence, not just the Bible, telling us that Chatzor was the biggest and mightiest city. And the military collapse of the southern kings that we read in chapter 9 and 10 led Yavin, king of Chatzor, to realize that the Israel army had become an existential threat to him as well. He gathered a Canaanite and Amorite army, as numerous as the sand on the seashore, with very many horses and chariots, like we just read, planning to attack the Israelite camp at Gilgal with overwhelming military advantage and destroy it. Once the Northern Coalition forces moved south, fully arrayed for battle, the Israelites faced a very dangerous situation. But God gave Joshua precise timing, and the Israelite army marched north and launched a surprise attack on the Northern Coalition forces as they were assembling by the waters of Merom. We just saw Merom, which is above the Sea of Galilee. Apparently, in the highlights of Issachar, the tribe of Issachar, the pursuit split into two directions. One, northeast, towards the valley of Lebanon under Mount Hermon, and one northwest toward the border of the Great Sidon and Misrefot Maim. Today, Rosh Hanikra, which is the Mediterranean Ocean. And again, a single verse prevents us from thinking that the conquest of the land was simple or complete. But as for the cities that stood on their mounds, Israel burnt none of them except Chatzor only. That did Joshua burn. Okay, and indeed, layers of destruction in Canaanite cities, such as Lachish, which is, if you remember last week, we talked about Lachish, which is in the south part of Israel. And today there's an American base there that holds a lot of American generals, together with Israeli generals, kind of like overseeing the war in Gaza.
Actually, it's Kiryat Gat.
Yeah, Lachish, but that's the area.
Yeah.
Kiryat Gat is in the area of Lachish. And from later periods, whereas the massive destruction layer uncovered in the area of Tel Chatzor matches this precise period and even identifies the destroyers. In the temples of Canaanite Chatzor, archaeologists found statues whose heads has been deliberately struck off, both Canaanite and Egyptian idols, as noted by Professor Amnon Ben Tor. And this is clear and early evidence of Israelite religious faith, of people rejecting idolatry and affirming their unique relationship with God. Okay, so this is by Rabbi Yoel Ben Nun, who's a Bible teacher and commentator as well. Here is a short 5-minute movie about Tel Chatzor. It's like, we're not going to go to Israel soon, so I'm bringing the archaeology to you. So sit back and watch this interesting film of Tel Chatzor. You can see how gigantic it is. You know, if you need to think in more local terms, right? Gigantic for back then. Okay.
Hatzor is located northwest of the Sea of Galilee, on the southwestern edge of the Hula Valley. In ancient times, Hatzor controlled a major trade route of the ancient Near East. These are the ruins of ancient Hatzor. Now, Hatzor is described in the book of Joshua as the head of the northern Canaanite city-states. It's also the site of one of Joshua's most important victories in the Israelites' conquest of the Promised Land. Now, Hatzor is mentioned in Judges 4 and 5, Yabin, king of Canaan, who dwells in Hatzor. And it's mentioned again in 1 Kings 9:15 as being one of the Canaanite cities rebuilt by Solomon for his administration of power. The upper city of ancient Hatzor, the ruins of which you can see on that ridge behind me, encompass about 20 acres. But the lower city of Hatzor is underground on this massive field, encompassing about 180 acres, making Hatzor the largest archaeological tell in Israel. In the ruins of Tel Hatzor's upper city, archaeologists have uncovered storehouses, stables, and this odd six-chambered gate. There is one big mystery about ancient Hatzor that has the so-called experts befuddled. Why a six-chambered gate? What exactly did they do here? Some speculate that they were guard stations or places of commerce. But if guard stations, why six? Why not just one big room? It would be easier to build and would lend itself to healthier social interaction. Let's see if I can unpack this puzzle. Station 1, guard station. Yeah, I'm on a roll. Station 2, ticket booth. Station 3, ticket taker. Station 4, my personal favorite. It's where you get your funnel cakes, your snow cones, and your corn dogs. Station 5, this is the break area for all the guys who work the park in the character costumes. Oh, by the way, the guy with the bear suit, you may want to stay away from him. He's a little too friendly. And finally, Station 6, it's where they recharge the segways. Mystery solved. You can thank me later. The similarity of the design of these distinctive structures here in Hatzor to those uncovered in Megiddo and Gezer, and the century to which they're dated, the 10th century BC, lead most to conclude that they were built by Solomon's empire. Again, we find a match to the record of the Old Testament. Here is the account of the forced labor King Solomon conscripted to build the Lord's temple, his own palace, the supporting terraces, the wall of Jerusalem, and Hatzor, Megiddo, and Gezer. Some of the most impressive remains from Hatzor date back to the Middle and Late Bronze Ages, when the Canaanites lived in this city. Many structures and artifacts were discovered, including religious figurines and standing stones. But perhaps the most impressive were the remains of this Canaanite temple that many say was destroyed by the Israelites. As it turned out, none of Solomon's fortifications at Hatzor would be able to fend off the mighty nations to the east, for whom, hundreds of years later, the people of Israel would be no match. Hatzor was conquered and occupied by the Assyrians in the 8th century BC, and then destroyed by the Babylonians in the 6th century BC. One day in Hatzor, everything was normal. The Israelite guarding in this watchtower went home to his family, to a nice meal, a warm fire, and then he woke up to see invading armies coming into Israel. Perhaps even the prophecy from Jeremiah was echoing in his mind. Hatzor will become a haunt of jackals, a desolate place forever. No one will live there. No man will dwell in it.
That's about Tel Hatzor. I hope that was a new and enlightening fact for you. Let's continue with the chapter. At that time, okay, Joshua went and wiped out the Anakites from the hill country, from Hebron, Tzvi, and Anav, from the entire hill country of Judah, and from the entire hill country of Israel. Joshua proscribed them and their towns. No Anakites remained in the land of the Israelites, but some remained in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. Okay, who are these Anakites? These Anakites in Hebrew, it's the giants. Okay, if you remember when Moses sent the spies to the land of Israel, they got back. Okay, and 10 of the 10, there were 12 spies, and 10 of them came and kind of like badmouth the land of Israel, and they said they have these giants there, and we'll never be able to defeat them. They're like huge people. They're like, so strong, etc. These are the Anakites. Okay, so Joshua was one of those 12 spies, but he was one of the two. There were two good spies, Joshua and Caleb. They were the two good spies. He said, yes, we will be able to defeat them. And here we have Joshua defeating the Anakites that lived in the area. Some remain, though, in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. That's like along the coast. Okay, that's today, Gaza today, and Gath and Ashdod. But that's not the Philistines yet. Although we do find a giant coming from there later on, okay, with the story that we will read next year of King David and Goliath. Goliath was a giant, and he came exactly from God, from there. So, someone might have intermarried there and had this, a few giants were still remained there, right? So it's interesting that they're trying to tell us no Anakites remained, but here, some giants did remain. Thus Joshua conquered the whole country just as God had promised Moses, and Joshua assigned it to Israel to share according to their tribal divisions, and the land had rest from war. Okay. In reality, though, we know that the land did not rest from war, and we know that not all the inhabitants of the land were defeated or expelled or killed. In reality, many of them remained there, and we will see it. First of all, archaeological evidence tells us that, but also the Bible itself tells us that. So it's kind of like the wishful thinking, okay, of the author of this part to say no one remained. But we see that later on people did remain and some of the nations remained. Yes, Larry?
Does some of this foreshadow the chaos that eventually follows in Judges?
Yeah, that's a good question. The chaos that happens later on in the book of Judges, where the Israelites are surrounded by enemies, the Philistines and other nations, is really due to the fact that many of these nations remain in the area, and the Israelites are kind of like secluded in their own cantons in a way. So let's move on to chapter 12, because it's really kind of like the same theme of the same war. The following are the local kings with whom the Israelites defeated and whose territories they took possession of. East of the Jordan, from the Wadi Arnon to Mount Hermon, including the eastern half of the Arava, King Sichon of the Amorites, who resided in Heshbon and ruled over part of Gilad, from Aroer on the bank of the Wadi Arnon and the Wadi proper up to the Wadi Yabok and the border of the Ammonites, and over the eastern Arava up to the Sea of Kinneret and southward by way of Bet Yeshimot at the foot of the slopes of Pisgah on the east, down to the east of the Araba, that is the Dead Sea. Also the territory of King Og of Bashan, one of the last of the Rephaim, who resided in Ashtaroth and in Edrei, and ruled over Mount Hermon, Salka, and all of Bashan up to the border of the Geshurites and the Makithites, and also over part of Gilead, down to the border of King Sichon of Heshbon. These were vanquished by Moses, the servant of God, and the Israelites, and Moses, the servant of God, assigned that territory as a possession to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Menashe. Okay, so this is kind of like laying out the borders of what the Israelites have won. Okay, so it starts here, and it also goes on the east bank. Okay, this is like the west bank, but this is the east bank, which is Jordan today, and the 2.5 tribes, the Reubenites, the Gadi, and the half tribe of Menashe, were all settled in those areas. And the following are the local kings whom Joshua and the Israelites defeated on the west side of the Jordan, from Baal Gad in the valley of the Lebanon to Mount Chalak, which ascends to Seir, which Joshua assigned as a possession to the tribal divisions of Israel. In the hill country, in the lowlands, in the Arava, in the slopes, in the wilderness, and in the Negev, in the land of the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. They were, and now comes a long list of all the kings. They were the king of Jericho 1, the king of Ai near Bethel 1, the king of Jerusalem 1, the king of Hebron 1, the king of Jarmuth 1, the king of Lachish 1, the king of Eglon 1, the king of Gezer 1, the king of Debir 1, the king of Geder 1, the king of Hormah 1, the king of Arad 1, the king of Libnah 1, the king of Adullam 1, this is all in the south, the king of Makedah 1, the king of Bethel 1, this is already in the center parts of Israel, the king of Tapuach 1, the king of Hefer 1, the king of Afek 1, the king of Sharon 1, the king of Madon 1, the king of Chatzor, now we're really going up north, 1, the king of Shimron Meron 1, the king of Achshapah 1, the king of Taanach 1, the king of Megiddo 1, now we're on the more east-north side, the king of Kedesh 1, the king of Yokneam in the Carmel 1, the king of Dor in the district of Dor 1, that's by the ocean, the king of Goim in Gilgal 1, the king of Tirza 1, total number of kings 31. Okay, so can you imagine they had to go against 31 kings that united against the Israelites, and they won the war against all of them. So these are those two interesting chapters, but I want to focus on a few other elements of it. The first one was what we saw, that they kind of like hurt the animals. They hamstringed the horses. Okay, that's a pretty harsh thing to do. And Dr. Moshe Sokolov talks about destroying the engines of war. In this chapter, the Israelites have to overcome a broad coalition of Canaanite forces arrayed against them at a place called Mei Merom. While some of their places of origin are unidentified, Madon, Shimron, Achshaph, they are led by the king of Hatzor in the Upper Galilee, today a UNESCO World Heritage Site, whose excavation by Yigal Yadin in the 20th century was a milestone in Israeli biblical archaeology. At the time of Joshua, Hatzor was something akin to a regional center, the head Rosh of all those other kingdoms. So it is understandable why the king of Hatzor would play a central role in this affair. God told Joshua not to fear, promised him victory over this vast enemy, and instructed him to hamstring their horses and burn their chariots. Since the battle would already have been won, what point could there be in doing permanent damage to the horses? Okay, if God promises them victory, why would he ask him to hurt the innocent horses? Okay, in our comments on chapter 6, we addressed the weaning of the Israelites off their dependence on divine intervention and their training to gradually assume responsibility of their own destiny. This act, for all that it appears to be gratuitous cruelty to animals, is another step in that process. Horses served military functions almost exclusively throughout the Bible. Oxen pull the plows, donkeys are the beasts of burden, and long trips are taken on camels. So God ordered them to destroy the enemy's chariots and hamstring their horses to reinforce the point that the Israelites' fortunes of war depended not only on their growing military prowess, but on their obedience to him as well. Okay, so I hope you're following here. Hurting the horses, from our perspective today, doesn't make sense from 2 points of view. One, the cruelty to the animal, and second, you can capture the horses and then train them, okay, to be vehicles to move from one place to the other, or to plow the fields. However, back then, horses were not used for that. Okay, horses were only used as a tool of war, to be with chariots and to move fast from one place to the other. If you wanted to go on a trip, you would do it with with camels. Okay, it makes more sense because the camels in the desert do a much better job going through. If you want to move things from one place to the other, you would use donkeys. If you want now to plow the field, you use the oxes. In your mind, you don't get a horse to do these things. Today, we do it differently, right? We do use horses for that. And that's why they were ordered to hurt those engines of war, the horses. And he finishes with the verse from Psalms, as the psalmist put it, these may depend on chariots and those may depend on horses, but we will put our trust in calling on the Lord our God. Okay, so again, this kind of like the verse shows that horses were used for that. Are we too cold here? Are we okay? Freezing? Okay, yeah, everyone. Okay. Does anyone know how to do Larry?
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, it's here.
Okay.
Yeah, you might. I don't know what the temperature is on now.
It says 72.
Do you have a hammer? Just hit it.
Yeah, right. I don't know.
Real trick is you gotta get it.
But let's continue with chapter 12 that we read also as well today, which talks about the disunited states of the land of Israel.
I just wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Couldn't they have possibly captured
I'm gonna make sure that the vote is.
horses and then use them for their own purposes?
The question is, the question of why didn't they capture the horses and use them for their army? So it wasn't in the thinking of the Israelites to do that, which is very interesting, not to use horses. That was something like the other nations did that. Okay, it's like the Bible, like the Torah tells us that you should not have another king but God. But if you do have a king one day, make sure he doesn't have too many horses and things like that. So the Israelites wants to keep it modest, but it's right. But if you can win the war better, why not do it? This kind of like reminds us what happened here in America, right? When the white people came and started taking Native American Indian land, okay, when the Indians got hold of their shipments of guns and cannons, they did not use them. They destroyed them. They rather use the bow and the arrows and ride on horses because that's what they knew. Okay, I think only later on they kind of like learned how to use the guns, but it didn't make sense to them. They were like warriors. There's like you want to fight someone, you get to them, you either with an arrow. That was their expertise. So they didn't use the guns against the white people. They destroyed the guns, right? So it's kind of like the same thing happening here. So nowadays, we struggle to see how two people could possibly split the small land and both have a viable piece of territory to live on. Imagine what the political map looked like when Israel was divided into the 32 states. And don't forget the Gibeonites, each with its own king. And spoiler alert, next chapter we'll find out that those 32 kings only represent a small portion of the population of the land, okay? what Rabbi Avidan Friedman tells us is, let's pay attention to the fact that there were 32 kings here, not just two kings for Judah and Israel. And he says that the poetic structure of the chapter, which arranges each king on his own line, followed by a long space, and then the word one, highlights the individuality of each entity. The only time they came together was to make war against Israel. And from their abject failure, we can assume that their wartime unification was not very successful. 31 mini armies, each with its own hierarchies and chain of command, is giving graphic representation in the way the chapter is written as too tall, unstable towers, easily toppled by the United Nation of Israel. So even though Israel might have been smaller and weaker and not as trained, and they did not have horses and chariots, they had a better well-trained army. And because they won the war, so they're like, what do we need horses and chariots? You know, like, look at them, they have all this power, but they did not succeed in using it. The Midrash, which is the rabbi's commentaries on the biblical stories, so the Midrash understands the endless city-states of Canaan as embassies. If your flag did not fly in Canaan, you are nobody. That's from Tanhuma. Israel was and historically always remained a desired land, a beloved inheritance of legions of nations, a tiny plot of land coveted and fought over endlessly in ways that utterly defy historical and political logic. Okay, so all these nations, they wanted Israel, okay? They wanted the spoils. Israel was a good country in the middle of the Fertile Crescent, okay, of those times, and Mesopotamia, and they wanted it. Every ruler of the Roman Empire, the Greeks, the Babylonian Empire, the Persian Empire, they all wanted Israel and its spoils, so that's why they all went to war for it. But the ultimate destiny of this land, he says, is not that it be the sole possession of the Jewish nation, a precious jewel to be jealously kept for God's special treasured nation alone. Rather, Jeremiah continues to explain, the smallest of all nations, the Israelites, is meant to take the smallest of lands and make Jerusalem into God's seat, and all the nations will aspire to God's name, to Jerusalem, and all nations will be blessed by it and praise in it. Only one nation, united under one God, can turn the small land from a place of competition and war over limited resources to a place that could provide blessing equality to all. Okay, so his commentary is like, instead of being divided into all these kingdoms, there could have been potential for more like grand peace in that region. Okay, and even the Israelites, it's only their land if they behave in a just and moral way. And we know that later on in the book of Kings, when the Israelites disobey God and behave in a corrupt way, God removes even the Israelites from the land. His beloved people don't get to be in the land when they don't live up to it. And now I want to go into a lengthier article, okay, which I thought is very interesting. And that's on the command to exterminate the Canaanite people, okay? And we talked about it a few times. It's for us modern readers today, it is hard to read a book where everyone is kind of like exterminated, okay? Why is that? We understand, okay, the logic, but how do we, as modern readers today, living in the 21st century, settle this in our own minds? And I want to offer this commentary by Rabbi Yuval Sherlow from Petach Tikva in Israel, with an introduction by Dr. Leah Mazar, who's a Bible professor in Israel. And they write like this: only of the cities of these people that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance shall you make no covenant and show no mercy, but you shall utterly destroy them. The Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusite, just as the Lord your God has commanded you, that they not teach you to do according to all their abominations which they have done to their gods, so you would sin against the Lord your God. And Joshua struck all the land, he left no survivor, and he devoted to destruction every breathing thing, as the Lord God Israel commanded him. So Professor Mazur says, I think you turned on the heat now, Larry. It's like this is like it's warm. Yeah, can we put something in the middle? Like what is it now on?
75.
Ugh.
Not you though, just
Yeah.
turn up.
Yeah, but now it's blowing heat.
Take it down to 65.
Let's try to compromise somewhere in between. Yeah.
When did you arrive?
So she writes like this: I turned to Rabbi Yuval Sherlow and asked him now, in his view, these passages ought to be taught today. Below in his reply, his remarks here are partially based on his position in the field of ethics of war, which he has published elsewhere. Rabbi Sherlow is very well known for his writing on ethics in general, ethics in war, and he's consulted by medical and political authorities from the entire nation of Israel. So he's an expert on that.
Who's involved with Abba?
And
That's his son.
no, that's his uncle.
That's his son.
There's a frontal clash between the principles, goals, and rules of warfare in the biblical period and those of the world in which we live today. One marked contradiction is the apparent absence in the Bible of a concept of forbidden war, or at least of things that are forbidden to do during war. Not only that, but among the purposes of war that the Bible lists are aims involving total annihilation, expulsion, and wars of complete destruction. By contrast, in the world we live in today, those behaviors are defined as war crimes and crimes against humanity. At the principled level, they are entirely outside of acceptable thought. Okay, this is also very relevant to discussions that are going on today, right, with the war. What then should a student of the Bible who belongs to both worlds do? Theoretically, the contradiction could be resolved in two other ways. One, by adopting the biblical principles and viewing them as the correct stance. Rabbi Meir Kahana's ideology adopted such an approach, and today some of the followers appear in works such as Baruch HaGever or Torat HaMelech, which are extreme writings of some very extreme extremists in Israel, or by rejecting the Bible as a foundational text shaping our consciousness. Both of these routes seem to me, Rabbi Sherlow writes, perverse, and therefore I pose the question from a starting point of a strong and essential connection to both worlds at once. Background for these questions is found in the book of Professor Sagi, Avi Sagi, Religion and Morality. He's also a very well-known philosopher, Jewish philosopher in Israel. And actually, I think he wrote the introduction to the book of my mother, right? Professor Avi Sagi. In the context of this short essay, the issue is the question of how to teach this chapter in the Bible. It seems to me that learners should be trained to divide their study into two stages. In the first stage, one should study the Bible as it is, not apologetically, not apologizing, and not with criticism, but letting the Bible present itself. This is what we try to do here many times. The Bible presents the struggle with the people of Canaan as a struggle that has many aspects that justify and even mandate a war of annihilation. The various biblical arguments are, okay, so why does the Bible take this approach? One, the people of Canaan are morally the worst in human society. Their morality is dreadful, both regarding relations between persons, the many injustices they commit, and regarding matters between a person and himself, their sexual corruption, and also with respect to idolatrous worship that they promote in the world. Okay? Two, the people of Canaan intend to fight us to the end. And if we leave them in the land, they will bring about our complete destruction. Okay, when the choice is either they or us, your life precedes the life of your neighbor. Makes sense, right? 3, we offer them in advance not to fight. We call them to peace, and we are willing to accept them as resident strangers in the land. This matter is subject to great controversy among biblical exegetes, but in light of the sages' midrash, the Gergashi turned the left. Many have learned that there's no obligation to annihilate them, but rather to remove them from the land. Okay, so you don't have to annihilate them. So here is another approach that we could call upon peace to the neighbors. 4, we do not find any moral hesitation with regard to this activity, and therefore one may infer that the act was not contrary to the moral positions of the period. Many incorrectly learned that King Saul morally hesitated about wiping out Amalek, but a reader of the chapter, even a superficial one, finds no moral hesitation there. Okay, so meaning everyone did this back then. It wasn't like an immoral act in the times of those nations. In the second stage of reading the Bible, Rabbi Shirley suggests, we place ourselves facing the content of what we have studied. This stance should cause us to do 2 things. On the one hand, to acknowledge that the goals of war and its methods are no longer in the same place, God willing, and that we are today in a completely different situation. On the other hand, we study the Bible in order to draw from it those correct elements that existed in these wars, such as the recognition that the biblical position in parallel with human rights and existence contains significant moral claims, and when the other side does not act morally, as the Canaanites did, there is an obligation to struggle against that in the means by which we fight today. Okay, so we are able to distinguish between the morals today and the morals back then, but sometimes the morals back then make sense and we need to operate according to them. And sometimes they don't make sense and we recognize that there is new morality. Wait, I just want to finish the whole part and then we can have a discussion about it. And he concludes, this message is particularly important because many blurred the question of human rights with the realm of the duties of a person, which we ignore. The biblical message that the one who comes to kill you rise early to kill him, and the Bible teaches us that the right to wage war of our survival is an integral part of human life and of Judaism, etc. In the last 2 examples, we are not dealing with Bible study only to reinforce our existing worldview without it, but rather with study intended to present positions that differ from those found in some sectors of society today. Okay, so Rabbi Sherlow is kind of like helping out, lay out to how do we study the Bible. First, we study it from the point of the Bible itself, understanding why they waged war in a way that seems cruel to us, okay, laying out those reasons. If you don't wipe them up, they would wipe you up because they're morally corrupt to such a great way. This is the way people conducted wars, etc. But then you do bring your own modern understanding after you've done that in an honest intellectual way, which is understanding the things that you adapt from the Bible and the things that you don't adapt from the Bible. So a very interesting way of looking at it, which I think could kind of like synthesize both the biblical classic approach and also the more modern humanistic approach. Yes, Larry.
Well, it just seems to me that this is examples of Judaism changes as it evolves. The rabbis have reevaluated things over the centuries. I would love to see a typical argument, say in the Mishnah, addressing some of these things. It's never been static. I mean, even today, we evolve, we reevaluate what we've been doing.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful approach to look at Judaism as well. This is kind of like the secret of Judaism. If Judaism was stagnant and would have stayed like the Bible, we might have been extinct like the other nations, like the Roman Empire, the Greeks, okay? They're long gone, okay? But the people of Israel are still here because they were able to adapt and changed throughout the centuries, okay? And the Mishnah, the Midrash, is really what tells us that they offered peace to all the inhabitants. Although if we read the text carefully, we don't really see that. Okay, yes, Inga?
There's so much of God related,
Uh-huh.
you know, I wonder. How all of this could have happened if it hadn't been so God related.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a miracle when we think about it, of how history moves and changes and how God intervenes, sometimes in a clear, direct way, like in the Bible, and sometimes like God's mysterious hand, which we don't see evolve, but here, here we are today as a Jewish people alive. Yes, anyone else?
Well,
Yeah.
at the risk of being unpopular.
Okay, yeah, that's why you're a student here. You can.
Right. No, if you think about it, I mean. Bringing it today, there are those who would, call upon God, that God has told us that we can, have the total rights of the land and. And can exterminate the people in it or send them away, that, among Jewish people, and then there are other people as well, who God has a different name, but it's the same God, who feel the same way about the Jewish people. So I mean that, you have the ideas here that can be used by other nations as justifications that their God is saying that it's okay to, exterminate one group of people. Then you have people among ourselves who say the same thing, that our God says it's okay. And let's not forget the Christian crusades. So I mean, there's a lot of usage of these particular passages, both in our favor and against us as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point that you're saying, like these texts exist and anyone could pick them up and kind of like say, oh, I'll act accordingly, and exterminate the others. But I think that goes back to like what Larry said, it evolves. You need to recognize that humanity changes and things do change. And today, it's true that some of the enemies of Israel want to extinct Israel altogether, and they don't want any Jews in the land of Israel. Okay, sadly, we know this. It's not something of the past, it's something that's happening right now. But if you look at the Jewish population today in Israel, even the extreme right in Israel that calls to settle the whole land, etc., and I'm the last person to protect, the extreme right approach, okay? But they don't come and say to annihilate all the other nations, okay? They say, kind of like the approach of Maimonides, if they come in peace, if they are willing to live in the land here with the Jews, so we will live in peace. They do have a problem with the ones who are not willing to live in peace. If they want to transfer them somewhere else, etc. I don't want to get into a political debate about that, if that's okay or not, but even they adapted the rabbinic way of thinking. Even they kind of neglected the Joshua way of thinking, the original thinking of the Bible to annihilate everyone. So within the Jewish world, no one disregards the sages and the rabbis and the Talmud and the Midrash and all this evolution of that brought us to today, which is more kind of like humane or more based like civil rights based. It's actually within Judaism, it's kind of like common. Everyone understands no one's gonna now go and exterminate the other nations. That's not part of the jargon of anyone in the Jewish world today.
By the
Yes,
way,
Larry?
I was just gonna add that, we didn't always behave well when we go forward to King David and you see all the things that he had done. They weren't all in accordance with, even at that time, what we would consider correct behavior.
Right. And the Bible, if he didn't do well, the Bible will criticize him and he will be punished, as we will see later on. Yeah.
I assume that when you were talking about calling for peace, that you refer to the chapters in Deuteronomy where you call for peace in the nations that are farther away from you, but the nations that are closer to you, you don't call for peace.
Yeah, that, we talked about it a
Right.
few times in chapter 7 and 8. But it's clear that the rabbis took that and adapted it to all nations, including the ones that are the local inhabitants. Okay, and because all the rabbis even made up like this thing, like all the nations are mixed up today. You don't know anyone who is like one from the 7 nations that you're supposed to exterminate, the local ones, or the further ones. They're all so blended. So now you have to call upon peace with all the nations, including the ones that are in Israel. And that's kind of like the prevalent thinking today in that sense. So I hope that was interesting to see how they were dealing with this these dilemmas and this perspective on morality and war in the Bible.